Right here, we doing an old school ice pick with a baby temp fade. Fade the neck out. We're going to keep this front dark. Line this all up. This is an old school cut right here. Check this. First, we want to start by just brushing this hair down. Getting all this hair laying flat. Gonna come around. Gonna brush out these little curls. Also gonna help us separate so we know what to cut and what not to cut. So here we want to make sure we keep this dark. You right? We're gonna do a 1.5 open though, because I just want to keep it a little darker. So we just want to smooth this down so that hair starts to get laying down right there. It's going to lay down over the edge. We want to make sure we keep these corners a little longer. If you had a cowlick right here, we would really want to, we don't want to just attack that with wavelength down. So you got to make sure you pay attention. Luckily he has no cowlicks. He's laying down flat. So we're going to continue doing this all the way around the front of the head. You can see we got this weight right here. We're just going to smooth this down in.
Okay, that's all needed.
Move the ear out of the way. You don't got to go high up into the head. We literally just want to hold it like right on the edge up. Laying these edges down. This is what I call wavelength. And the reason we're doing this right here is strictly to keep the edge up crispy so that whenever we go to line up, we're not going to have a lot of movement because the hair is not going to be too long. And when we go to line up, it's going to be a lot quicker, easier, sharper, and darker. See this front corner area, we're just going to get this clipper and just lightly get it right on the edge. And that naturally blends up in. Now we have a nice solid base all the way around.
Okay.
Now we want to prep our fade area. So we're going to prep this area right here. Kind of smooth this out a little with a 1.5 open, and that's just going to blend nicely into what we already did, which was the 1.5 wavelength. Now we can lower it and then prep our area for this mini temp fade we're going to put in this. Back of this neck, we're going to prep this with our 1.5. So we're just going to scrub this, keeping the blade flat. Really just assuring that everything we're going over is a 1.5, and then we're going to open that up fully and flip that out up into that afro. You can see there's not that much weight right there. It's because he gets a haircut off, but normally you're going to have a lot more weight. We already got a nice naturally flowing up fade right here. So I'm just really prepping for where we're going to do our next fade. This step should not take long. We're talking like less than a minute just prepping all the way around. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're just prepping the fade area, and this is just a 1.5 slightly open. And then we can come through and smooth that and connect that with a wavelength down. So all we've done so far is really just prep the lineup, prep the fade area, and get everything to an either 1.5 wavelength or 1.5 against the grain, which is going to be perfectly ready to line up. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to go to our lineup. So we're trying to keep this lineup natural, following that line straight down. And because we have prepped this with a 1.5 wavelength, you can see we have no movement in the hair. We're able to one touch, put our lineup in, and look, there's really not that much hanging over, just one little piece. And the reason that this is a lot easier to do around the ear, if you struggle with, you know, spending too much time lining up around the ears, it's because you should just cut the hair length down to the correct length first, and then it'll make that lineup easier. So that's why I'm able to move real quick around these ears. It's because the length's already where it needs to be. So we're going to do the same thing on this side, getting our point down in, and then once we get this down in, we can check it here. Make sure it's, I like to use a little bit of an arch.
And then
Nice sickle sideburns. I'm going to start with the sideburn, so connect it up into the top. So I'm going to have a starting point up here,
customized characters
like this. I have a starting point down here. This is the skinniness here, this is the thickness here, and then we just want to connect the dots. We're going to come through, and we're just going to kind of follow up in, and you can see where we're supposed to connect. Kind of just eyeball. This is part of lining up that actually takes skill and art. We want to brush that hair forward. You can see it's starting to come over the lineup. That's because the hair is too long. Now, if you remember what I told you around the ears, when the hair is too long, it's harder to line up. So you can see as I keep lining it up and brushing it, it's not crispy. That's because the hair is too long. So actually what I should do,
Even my way back.
re-smooth this down, and you can see it's not cutting much, but it's cutting something. That's going to ensure that there's no overhang on that lineup.
Christmas break went by so fast, it was ridiculous.
Reline this up at the correct length, which would...
I got breaks for like 3 months. So I'm hurt.
You want to hold this ear down. And just use the corner of this blade to etch away. You can pull the ear backwards. And then clean up underneath the line. So you got 2 ear movements, one down, one back. And this one, when you pull it back, it really stretches that skin and lets you get around the ears nicely. And then carry that right into the sideburn. Create a little space up here. So we have a little start. We have a start right here, and we have a stop right here. And then we just want to connect that in between. A little bit weird of an angle because I'm trying to get this in the camera for y'all. But you can kind of see how if your eyes focus here and here, you can just kind of connect. And if it was not skinny enough, you would be able to see it. It would look weird. So you just got to make sure that you keep going in, using the corner of this blade, trying to etch away to create this C-curve shape. I got it real nice. We're going to fade this little section out in the middle right there. You can see how nicely that C-curve was put in there. And all we really did was connect the dots right there. It's a lot easier when you have a start and a stop point. This side, his hair doesn't grow over the lineup. So we're just going to brush it straight down and kind of see where you want to keep these lineups natural. That's where you want to look for. You want to look for the natural part of the lineup. You don't want to push that in too far. Like right here, I can't really see like if that's really where it's supposed to be. So what we're going to do is we're just going to clean that up, leave it go, and then work on this center and bring our center into our corner, which is going to give us a realistic corner and kind of an image of where we should put this because these corners are light right here. So we're just going to clean it up at first. That gives us a nice look. Then we can come through and perfect this lineup once we see what's going on. We're going to leave the hair on the sideburn, and then we're going to fade that little bald temp up in. And you can see we just made one little bald line right there. We're going to go no guard open. Close it a little bit. That should get that bald line out very quickly. We're going to switch to our one here. And then with just the corner of this blade here, we're just going to etch away at that little bit of hair above that mark that we had. And just by doing this step alone, you can see it's almost faded already. We're going to use this one to kind of get this sideburn to an even length. Making sure that this whole little fade area is a 1. Whatever this 1 don't get out, you know a 16th is going to get out. So I'm going to go over this one more time, and then we're going to switch to our 16th. I'm just using this little tiny piece of the blade. Just etching away. Imagine that little half circle shape right here that we had originally created with our bald line, and we're just following that imaginary circular shape, fading that up in. So we're going to put this bald line in right here, just a little bit of a bald line right at the bottom of this temp. See what it looks like right there. So we left the hair for the sideburn. This is what I call an ice pick bald temp. So we're going to go no guard open. Only using a little bit of the blade. You got to think we're only working in this little tiny area right here. So when you're in a tiny area, you want to use a tiny bit of your blade. Just like if it was a paintbrush. If you had a real small canvas, you don't want to use the whole clipper. You want to use just a little bit of the clipper. So that bald line came out, and now we're just going to lightly flick this away with the 1. And because of his hair being so curly, and also because we prepped it with our 1.5, it's not creating any lines. It's actually fading really quickly and easily. These little tiny temp fades, guys, if you're only fading a little tiny 1/4 inch spot, it shouldn't take the whole haircut. It should take a 1/4 of it. And that's what you need to focus on. Really identify what's taking so long in your haircuts, because there's certain things that should take long and there's certain things that shouldn't. This is one of them things that should not take long. Okay, so if you don't got a process, follow my process, because look, it works. So once you clear all that out, you can kind of see, all right, there's a little bit of that bald line left, and it doesn't take much to get that out. All right, so we're going to start with no guard open, same step as before. We're just going to work a 1/4 inch above that bald line. See that bald line's right here. We're going to just work a little bit above it. And while we're doing this, we're not looking at this line. We're looking at the line below it. So look, we're looking at that original ball line right there. See that little bit of a line? We're just going to lower this, and this should get it out. Now look, where the canvas is flat and wide, I can use the whole clipper here. But as I get to the sides of the head, I want to use the corners of the blade. So on this side, I use this corner, and then I flow it into a full clipper, and then flow it into a corner of this clipper. See how this kind of flows from left to right? That's because this is a curved surface. So now we're going to scrub this with a 1. We already did our 1.5 earlier, so that's why this is blending so easily, just like the other steps, guys. So we do the same steps all the way around. It's nothing new. Little bit open. Look, that blends up perfectly into the top. That's, like I said, we already prepped that area. It's going to save you a lot of work later if you prep first. Trust the process. Now we're going to switch to our 16th. And we're just going to scrub where that original weight was that we created. This usually gets most of it out. Now what ends up happening on the back of people's necks, the hair's darker and thicker. So sometimes this 16th does not get that line out, and that's whenever you have to go no guard open. And if that don't get it out, you can go a little bit more closed and just keep working your way down until it gets that line out. Now, let's say I accidentally made a weight above it. I could put my 16th back on, open my 16th up, and get that weight out. Don't be scared to make weight above it. Get the hard line out first, and then come back through and perfect. Coming back through, just checking our fade, making sure everything's out. It doesn't hurt to go over your fade 1 or 2 times just to make sure everything's there, but this is what I consider like an original ice pick with a temp. Whenever you have corners like this, you want to start with the center first, kind of get your base center down, and then work out to each side. Kind of like that. But realistically, what we're doing in here is we're starting with a start point and another start point, and then we're connecting. So when you're lining up, you really want to connect the dots mentality. And that's going to help you connect lineups in different symmetrical shapes without losing focus on what's symmetrical or not. Because without your dots, without your key points to focus your eyes, you're going to lose track and you're going to get uneven lineups. So you really need to create a process in which you do, whatever works best for you. I have my own way of checking and doing. After I razor, after I do everything, I always come back through and do one final lineup. And I always think that like this last little bit of that lineup is going to get any little hairs that you might have left and really perfect that lineup and keep it crispy. So when you're done with your cut, you're never done. Go back through, make sure you line everything back up, brush all the hair around, make sure nothing's hanging over. Same thing around the ears here. You can come back in. I got it pretty good. This little step right here is what takes your cut from a 9.8 to a 10. It's attention to detail, and it's the little things